Welcome to the Helping Families Be Happy podcast, where we explore the often messy world of family, love, and relationships. I'm your host for this podcast, Adina Oberman, a mom, former preschool teacher, picture book lover, and member of the Familius marketing team. I'm also the creator of Big Books for Little Hands, a site dedicated to connecting parents and teachers with the best books for the ups and downs of life with young children. We welcome today's guest, Virginia Pillars. Virginia, author of Broken Brain, Fortified Faith, Lessons of Hope Through a Child's Mental Illness, lives on an Iowa farm with her husband of 49 years. She's the mother of four, one of whom suffered from mental illness, and a grandmother of four with a passion for reaching out to families who are also affected. She volunteers both as an educator and support group leader for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. She speaks to organizations about the effects of mental illness on families, mental wellness, and faith. Virginia became certified in first aid for mental health in 2014. She detailed her journey through mental illness with her child in her memoir, winner of the 2017 Sella Award for Memoirs and the Catholic Writers Guild Seal of Approval. Her writing has been published on sites including The Mighty, Joy Alive, CatholicMom.com, Daily Devotional, and Cures. She contributed essays to books including Brief Diaries, Poetry and Prose, and more, Whispers in the Pews, Sharing Your Catholic Faith Story, and Divine Interventions, Heartwarming Stories of Answered Prayer. You can learn more by visiting virginiapillars.com. This episode aligns with the Familius habits, heal together and talk together. You can learn more about the Familius 10 habits of happy families by going to the Habit Hub blog on familius.com. Welcome, Virginia. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Adina. Thank you for having me.
So I want to for you to share a little bit more about your book, Broken Brain, Fortified Faith, and how it came to be. So can you share how the book came together and what led you to start this journey?
Well, I've talked with so many families over the last almost 20 years now, and so many families felt like they were alone in their struggles. And we had gone through what I call a firestorm in our family, and I just felt compelled to document what our family experienced for other people to learn they're not alone and to live with hope that at the time the world felt very dark and I felt like I had no hope. So I wanted to write for other families to learn that hang on to the hope, because hope is always there no matter the darkness. So I started learning to write after I had gone through this with our family. Now, my child was an adult child when she had schizophrenia manifest in her life. So this was a story about helping an adult child through one of the most difficult times of their life. So once I decided to start writing this book, I knew I had to learn how. I found a local writing group in my own community and started joining them once a month and learning about writing and the mechanics of writing and practicing writing. So I did that for almost 7 years before I started to tackle writing my own journey. What else can I tell you, Adina?
Well, you've already touched on so many important messages, hanging on to hope and helping families feel like they're not alone and, trying to help them feel less isolated. And you've also already shared the importance of, continuing to be a lifelong learner and practicing and honing your craft. So it sounds like you're a very, very dedicated person, both to your family and to your work in all of its forms. So can you talk a little bit about what that journey was like with your family and as far as writing about it?
Okay, our journey actually began almost 20 years ago. And the first that I knew that something was wrong with our daughter happened on December the 9th of 2004. So that's why I said it's almost been 20 years now. We suspected something was not quite right with her because we just noticed that she wasn't her old self. She's a very outgoing gal, and she had turned more quiet and didn't interact with us as much. But when I had asked her what's going on, she'd say, I'm fine. I just have a lot going on. But on December 9th of 2004, my day started with a phone call from my daughter's employer who said, we think there is something really wrong with your daughter. They had put me down as her emergency contact. I raced to her, which was about an hour away from where I live, and I brought her home with me that afternoon, thinking I was bringing her home for the weekend. But in reality, she was unable to leave our home for 4 years. The reason I called the book Broken Brain was because her brain really did break. The connections that were in her brain were not connecting properly anymore, and her reality was not the same reality that we lived in. So we began a journey of finding her the help that she needed. We had no previous knowledge of the illness of schizophrenia, so we were very uneducated. I had to dive into learning about what she now faced. Books are my friend, and so the first thing I did was dive into books. And I went to the library in our local community and checked out every book I could find and devoured them. I also found the local organization, NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, right here in my own community, and began taking educational classes with them. So those two components really helped me to learn about what she faced and to become her advocate and go to bat for her and fight for the needs that she had. So the next 4 years was a journey between my husband and our daughter and myself, her doctors, her counselors, community helping us. We journeyed together as she went through what I call the nastiest symptoms that schizophrenia had to offer her. She became very much like a toddler, and I needed to learn how to react to her in a way that her brain could handle and move forward. And that's what we did. We just worked together. We kind of thought of ourselves as a team. And so 4 years later, she was able to move back out of our home and start to regain an independent life that she had looked forward to. And that is where she resides today, in a very independent life, as most women her age have. She works full-time. She is loved by her employers. She manages all her own affairs, business, medical, everything. If you met her today, you would never believe what this young woman went through to be where she's at today. So
it sounds like you and your husband and your family were really critical in her care and also in arriving at the point she is now in her life. It sounds like you even though you felt like you were really starting from square one about just learning about what was happening to her, it sounds like you you mobilized and you tapped into resources that were right there in your own community and taught yourself how to be an advocate and how to care for your daughter in a way that was really what she needed. And that's such an inspiration for our listeners. I think so many people are navigating mental health diagnoses, whether it's for themselves or a loved one in their immediate family. And I can imagine feeling um, very overwhelmed and unsure about sort of where to start and where you can find support. So you shared you found books in your local library, and you found uh, the National Association for Mental
Illness,
Mental
NAMI
Illness.
is the
Yes.
acronym, the
Mhm.
National Alliance on Mental Illness, and that is a grassroots organization that is nationwide, and it is run mostly by volunteers. They do have some key people who, are paid employees to keep the whole organization going, but the bulk of it are families and other people who maybe have suffered from mental health issues themselves that are just reaching out to others to help them along in their journey. It's a wonderful organization. I was given the number by one of our boys, one of our sons, who gave me the number and tuned me into this organization. When I found them, I found support that I needed and the education that I needed. So that is why I'm still involved with that organization today, because I want to be there for the next families that are also going through that. And Adina, you said people are confused and they just don't know where to start. And that is such an accurate statement of what a family is going through. They feel like they've been blindsided or kicked in the gut when something like this happens. And the question of why did this happen to us, sometimes doesn't get answered. But we have taken in our household not the question of why. We take the question, well, this has happened. Now what do we do with this to move forward? And that's been the story of our life together as husband and wife for the last 49 years. This is what's happened. What can we do with it?
Yes, it sounds like you have sort of taken the unexpected that life has thrown your way and really found support in each other, support in your community, it sounds like real strength in yourself. So I just want to thank you for sharing that.
You're
All of
welcome.
all of that personal information. Do you have recommendations for other families who might be looking for resources to support, their mental health or the mental health of a loved one? I know I think many people don't expect to be navigating a new mental health diagnosis. So aside from NAMI, do you have other places that you can direct our listeners?
There are some churches are really good at helping families navigate that. I know in our own church, our parish priest was wonderful for us. And so we did reach out to him. I recommend it. One thing that I found really helped me was I looked for books that were actually written by someone who shared the same diagnosis as our daughter. And I read a first person account of what someone went through. And that just opened like the door wide open for me to understand what possibly she could be going through and gave me a really clear understanding. So I do recommend families, when they're facing something new like this, to Google and find a first person account of that story, maybe by a family member or by the person themselves. I also recommend not keeping it to yourself, which is what I tried to do. And I lived in secret, and I was embarrassed to tell anybody about what was going on in my own home. And by doing that, I didn't find the close family and friends who actually wanted to step into this world with us and walk beside us. So I do hope that everybody can find that for themselves, the people that they trust, someone who they can bare their heart. When their heart is breaking, they can have someone just sit and cry with them, because that's a reality of it. We do sit and cry when stuff like this is happening to our loved ones or to us. To find your support group, even if it's just family and friends, or go out through a different organization and find that. There are also online resources, chat groups and things like that, to find if you don't have that in your own community.
I'm so glad you shared that. I think our instinct as people who are caring for family members and loved ones who need our help, whether it's temporary or long term, our instinct is to be the caregiver, the care provider, and we often get so wrapped up in caring for others that we forget how to take care of ourselves. So I'm very glad that you shared that. It's so important for you to refill your own cup, because
Yes.
It's hard to care for others when you
When
feel like you're running on empty.
when you're running on empty, an illustration that I often use when I'm speaking with groups and encouraging people for taking care of themselves. Self-care is so important for our mental wellness, for everything, that most people have ridden on an airplane and our what's the word I'm looking for? Our flight attendants always stand before the airplane always takes off and shows us the oxygen mask. And if you can remember, what the one thing they tell you on the airplane is to put your own oxygen mask on before you put it on anybody else. Because if we don't have oxygen, we can't help anybody else. So self-care, put on our own oxygen masks so that we can continue to care for other people around us.
So true. That is so true. I'm so glad that you shared that. I think we may all know that intellectually, and then when we go into kind of crisis mode, it sort of goes out the window.
We forget.
We do. We do. I want to make sure that I ask you um, about the faith part of
Okay.
your journey and that you share in the book. So can you talk about the um, how
My
the fortified faith came into the equation of your journey?
Thank you, Adina. At the very beginning of our conversation, I said that I asked why, and I was very questioning my faith. Why? Why would this happen to a family who has basically spent their whole married life trying to live a faith-filled life, and then something like this happens? And if you read our book, you'll find out that we had other health issues going on with other members of our family at the same time. So I felt like I got kicked once I was down, and I was angry. Um, I had an aunt suggest to me, again, read, and she suggested a book for me to read, which was When Bad Things Happen to Good People. And I followed her advice, and I also picked up the book of Job and read about all of his troubles and how he managed with those troubles. Reading those two books helped me to come to the understanding that this was life throwing me a curveball, because we live in a broken world. And instead of being angry, I came to lean harder into the faith that had been a part of my life since I was a small child. And I realized that it was the faith that I already had that helped me deal with the things that were happening around me, and that God was there for me and not against me. I began every day during what I call those hard years. Before the sun rose, I got out of bed and started my coffee, sat and drank coffee, and read. I read devotionals, I read Bible, I read many scriptures. I tried to center myself every single morning before my day started with the rest of the family, to have that fortified faith that I needed to cope with what was happening each and every day. that's a habit that I continue to this day, drinking coffee, beginning my morning with scripture readings and daily devotionals.
That's such a great reminder. I think that it's so important to have your, as you said, your self-care in whatever form is really the most meaningful for you. So for you, it was your faith and of course your coffee, which completely resonates with me. But also that those moments of, reflection and connection and, just caring for yourself, your mind, your spirit.
Yes,
I think
it
that's
was part of,
excellent.
yes, thank you. It's my self-care, really,
Yes.
to make sure that I take care of that part of me every single day, that it's first and foremost, and the rest of the day seems to just go so much better when I start my day that way. Not everybody's an early morning person, so I just encourage other people to find their time and their day, which works for them. Night owls might like it at the end of the day. So
Yes.
we're all individuals and we need to find what works for us.
That's such good advice. It sounds like you found so much strength and courage um and really inspiration from all of these things that you did to care for yourself, which helped you to care for your family at a time when you all really needed each other. So I appreciate you sharing all of that with us.
Well, thank you. You're welcome.
As we begin to wind down, can you please remind our listeners where they can find you online?
All right. You can find the book Broken Brain, Fortified Faith by me, Virginia Pillars. You can ask local bookstores to order it for you. You can find it through Amazon.com. I believe Barnes and Noble still allows you to order it through them. I have a blog, and I apologize in advance to readers. I have not been very good about keeping it updated, but it does have a lot of information on there. Right now, my thoughts, the speaking events that I've done in the past, and that's virginiapillars.com. That is a blog through WordPress. And so that is available to go and catch up with me. I also have a Facebook presence and a Pinterest presence. So you can find me out there on social media. I love talking with other families. So reach out to me through social media. If you have questions for me about mental illness, about mental wellness, about your faith journey, I've walked the path. And so I'm on a similar journey as many other people. And I love talking with people about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us today, Virginia. As
Thank
we
you for
conclude,
having me.
as we conclude today's podcast, I'd like to thank Familius for their support in bringing this podcast to your ears and your heart. We'd be thrilled if you subscribed to the podcast and left us a review. And when you're ready for that next amazing book adventure, we'd be honored if you'd choose a book from Familius. One step at a time, we can make the world a happier place.